The zeros of this graph are where it crosses through the x-axis. So I see three places where it crosses and or touches. So the first one is right here at -2, and that one I can see is one of those where it just touches, it doesn't actually cross all the way through. So that -2 is considered a double root or a double zero. So that one actually counts twice, even though you can only see it once. I have another 0 at 0, and then my third 0 is here at +1. The least degree is the number of hills and valleys plus 1. So I'm going to put a green star. Here's a hill, here's a valley, here's a hill. So I have 3 total green stars plus 1 would make it 4, which when you look back at your zeros kind of makes sense because you have -2 twice and then 0 and 1. So you have 4 zeros, meaning the least degree should be 4. Again, I'm going to cross out this extra least degree. All right, it's asking me for the minimums and maximums. So let's talk about minimums first. I only see one, and remember we're only talking about local or relative minimums, meaning I don't care about these two arrows that point down to -infinity. Those are absolute minimums. We're not talking about that. So I only see one, which is right here. And this one does not fall exactly on a whole number. So we're going to have to kind of make some estimations here. So it looks like it's not quite at -1. So I'm going to say it's maybe at -0.8. And then it's down maybe 2.5. So -2.5. So that would be my minimum. And then for my maximum, I actually have 2. One of them happens to be the same as our double zero, and that one is at an exact number, so -20. And then my other one is right here, which is not exactly at a whole number. So I'm going to estimate that that one is about 0.7, and then it looks like it's up 2. Okay, so we've got our maximums and our minimums. The domain is going to be all real numbers because if I followed the graph all the way to the left and all the way to the right, it would go forever and ever. So I'm going to put all real numbers for the domain. The range is not quite as easy. Because the arrows, and I'm talking about these arrows down here, they face the same direction, it means that there is going to be either a maximum value or a minimum value. And in our case, where the graph goes down to -infinity for the y values, but it stops right here at the y value of 2. So I have to write that my range is everything that's 2 or below. So I'm going to write that y is less than or equal to +2. So it could be 2 exactly, or it could be anything less than 2. For end behavior, oops, wrong color. For end behavior, remember that we always have that x is going to the right and left. So as x goes to the left towards -infinity, I'm looking at this arrow here on the left side. It's pointing down, so I want my y value to go towards -infinity. And then over here on the right side, as x goes to the right, the y value is also going to -infinity. So because those two arrows are pointing in the same direction, they're both using the same infinity symbol, which is negative. All right, now we have to talk about increasing and decreasing intervals. So what I want to do, I actually want to do two things because I think it'll be a little bit more helpful. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw in my boundary lines. And I'm crossing them through all of my maximums and minimums. So I have 2 maximums and 1 minimum, so I'm going to have 3 little boundary lines. And then the extra thing that I want to do is I want to put in the x values of those maximums and minimums, because those are the numbers that I'm actually using in my intervals. So I'm going to write them in red. This first maximum, or I'm sorry, yeah, it is a maximum, but the first boundary line is -2, so I'm going to put a -2 with a circle around it. This minimum in here, we said that that was -0.8. And then our last one is up here, and we said that it was about 0.7. So I'm going to put a 0.7 here. So these red numbers are the only ones that I'm going to use in my intervals. The next thing I'm going to do is highlight. And this time I'm going to highlight I'm going to color code them. So I'm going to make increasing intervals in yellow. So this would be an increasing interval because as I go towards the right, it's going up. Now remember that your intervals always alternate. So if my first interval is yellow and that's increasing, that means the next interval, I'm going to make it blue, would be decreasing. And that goes to the next boundary line. Then it's going to switch again and become increasing. And then it's going to switch one more time and become decreasing. So I have 2 increasing intervals and I have 2 decreasing intervals. So the first thing I'm going to do is my increasing intervals, and I'm going to do each one. One other thing I want to put on here, we're going to need infinity and negative infinity. So just remember that as you go to the left, that's going to be negative infinity, and as you go to the right, that's going to be positive infinity. All right, so for our increasing intervals, I'm going to start with the first yellow one that's on the left. It's going to start at negative infinity, and it's going to stop at -2. So I'm going to write negative infinity, -2. And then my next one, my next yellow part, starts at -0.8 and stops at +0.7. So starts at -0.8, stops at +0.7. Now we're going to do the same thing but with our decreasing intervals. So I'm going to start with my first blue one on the left. That one starts at -2 and it stops at -0.8. -2, -0.8. And then our final interval is the one all the way to the right, which starts at 0.7 and stops at positive infinity. So 0.7, positive infinity. So let me just label these one more, or actually I'm going to color code them. So these are my increasing intervals, and then these are my decreasing intervals.